Hi there, GE. This is Michael from OTCOnlineTOEFLCourse.com, and you are one of my TOEFL Writing Boot Camp course students. You took my TOEFL Speaking Boot Camp course. I think you got 27 or 28 on the speaking section, and now you're working on the writing. So let's see if we can do the same. And I want to get you up to at least 29 or 30, I think, on the writing. I think it's entirely possible. Okay, so where is the essay? Here it is right here. So this is the essay that you wrote, right? So I looked at it, read it over. I think there are quite a few language use, sentence structure errors in there. There's a few structural changes I might make. So I'm going to put you at about 22 to 24 points out of 30 on this. I think that's a pretty accurate score based on what I'm reading, right? So if we go over to the actual rubrics here, yeah, I think may demonstrate inconsistent facility in sentence formation and word choice. They may result in lack of clarity, occasionally obscure meaning, may display accurate but limited range of syntactic structures and vocabulary. I think the development is good, the organization is pretty good, but you just have a few language use issues that we need to work with, right? Now take notes, right? You can watch videos many times as you want, but typically I will tell you certain kinds of problems you're having in the writing, and then you want to write down those things. You can study them more by going to Google and typing in keywords, and typically I will give you those keywords. Okay, so let's do one paragraph at a time. How about that, buddy? The means of email communication is trendy nowadays. But we want to say something like this: at work, at home, or in interpersonal relationships with others. People need to communicate in order to express their ideas to others. See, I want to just kind of raise the topic a little bit more. Toward this end, we'll put the means of e-communication is trendy. Let's make this a little bit bigger here. You can see what I'm doing, right? So what I did is I added just this one sentence to raise a topic. So at home, at work, or in interpersonal relationships with others, people need to communicate in order to express their ideas to others. Toward this end, the means of e-communication is not in, just say is trendy nowadays. I think is plus trendy, which is an adjective, you're using that as a subject complement. So be careful of unnecessary prepositions. So it's trendy nowadays, which means that people are obsessed with this kind of communication. However, some people might say that face-to-face communication is still the better way for interacting purposes. As for me, I am still prone to e-communication, such as letters or telephone calls. You want to end that. I don't think you have to say first. It's a little awkward there. You have it, but it refers to letters or telephone calls, but then you have e-communication. I guess if you're using it to refer to e-communication, it's okay, but you can't use it to refer to letters or telephone calls. I'm going to say email such as email, text messages, or telephone calls, in that it is convenient and saves face Seems like we're repeating communication a lot here. Look at this. Communicate, communication. But sometimes you can repeat ideas and it has a way of unifying the paragraph. I'm still prone to e-communication such as email, text messages, or telephone calls, in that it is convenient and saves face. How about this? Compared to face-to-face communication, which is more emotion-oriented. Okay, so then we have our thesis. So your introduction is almost 100 words, probably okay there. So using email communication method is convenient in that people can communicate with each other wherever they go and under wherever. How about this? And whenever they want. I think this is a little wordy. Let's change this to how about messaging, maybe? Okay, let's keep going. Where are we at here? So we have, okay, the next paragraph first. Using e-communication method, how about helps people conveniently communicate with each other prepositions again, with each other wherever they go and whenever they want. How about this type of communication? I wouldn't use the word would, just say encourages. Encourages people to converse with each other without considering time expanses at all. Without considering, how about time differences? But you do have to consider, if I want to talk to somebody who's in Egypt right now, I got to remember that it's better for me probably to talk to this person at 6 or 7 p.m. my time. That way it's 11 or 12 in the morning on the next day. For instance, I can make phone calls to my friends who stay in the UK by tipping my fingernail on the phone. Although it's a fact that we're in a different time zone. How about I can easily, and that goes back to conveniently, I can easily make phone calls to my friends who stay in the United Kingdom. I don't even think you need this. I can easily make phone calls to my friends who stay in the UK, although again, a little wordy, although we're in different time zones. However, we can communicate with each other conveniently. But you've kind of already said that. How many words do we have here? I think some of this we have to take it out. Yeah, you want to get into the examples here. Unlike in the past, be difficult. It's impossible, for instance. Let's look at this. I don't even think we need all of this. Or how about this? You can probably get rid of that. In the past 30 years, it is impossible for those who stay in the U.S. to communicate with those who stay in China. One of my dad's friends who was in Boston seemed like seldom communicate with his friend who stayed in China, yet the situation impeded because there's no ecommunication platform. So I think that you need to use in the past 30 years kind of means 30 years ago up until now. But if you said maybe 30 years ago, it was impossible for those who stayed in the U.S. to communicate with those who, how about resided? Give you a different word there, resided in China. For instance, one of my dad's friends who was in Boston seemed like he seldom communicated with his friends who stayed in China. Yet the situation that impeded people trying to communicate so let's do this. I'm going to get this, yet put the lack of e-communication platforms impeded people trying to communicate. Put so. How about, let's get rid of this, put those who went abroad great difficulty getting connected with their friends. Therefore, from these two cases, is well acknowledged. You have a lot of unnecessary kind of words in there that kind of get in the way. I call it clutter. You have too much clutter going on in your writing. So I think that's one thing that you can work on here. And I'm going to change one thing here in this paragraph. How about who resided? How about just saying other? Keep it a little bit broader right here, and then you get to your detail. So you say 30 years ago, And maybe it was impossible. It's usually the it sentence constructions are not considered strong. Those who stayed in the U.S. found it impossible. So you could say something like that. That way it's a little more direct. So 30 years ago, those who stayed in the U.S. found it impossible to communicate with those who resided in other countries. For instance, one of my dad's friends who was in Boston seemed like he seldom communicated with his friends who stayed in China. I would say here maybe therefore or as a result. I think cause effect works better here than yet. Therefore, the lack, which means it's a similar idea, right? So the lack of e-communication platforms impeded people trying to communicate. So then we get rid of the it construction. Those who went abroad had great difficulty getting connected with their friends. Or maybe staying. Staying connected with their friends. Then we can change this to maybe as a result from these two cases, e-communication will benefit people's lives due to its convenience. It is the e-communication method that saves. That's a cumbersome way to say that. Why do we even have to say it? Check this out. You can say the e-communication method saves face, which means that people will avoid awkwardness and uneasiness when they do not want to have a face-to-face, when they do not want to have, how about face-to-face contact, so we don't repeat communication here. We can change this to contact. And then awkwardness and uneasiness, these are basically the same meaning here. So I don't see a big difference here. So let's get rid of one of them. Keep either one, it doesn't matter, but no need to have both. Means that people will avoid awkwardness when they do not want to have face-to-face contact with another. You can't use another plus plural. You could say with others and just get rid of the word people because you already used people previously. So for instance, when Cardi B and Nicki Minaj had a huge fight at Met Gala, they would be supposed. This is a pretty big grammar error here. I would use were there, not would be supposed. They were supposed to get back together after getting, I would say after creating a frenzy on the internet, not getting. This is where some of your pretty big problems start happening that are lowering your score. After creating a frenzy on the internet. But the detail is good. This is the key. I like how you're specific. After all, by giving a phone call or sending an email to each other from either party to apologize, no, this is some grammar limitations here. They were supposed to get back together after creating a frenzy on the internet. I think you want to say here, after all, giving, I'm going to say making. You don't give a phone call. You make a phone call. Or sending an email to each other from either party to apologize. I'm going to put would have solved. Why am I doing this? You're talking about something in the past, definitely, right? So we're now talking about a past impossible situation. So after all, making a phone call or sending an email to each other from either party to apologize would have solved this unhappy case. I would say here, not even though. I would say in as much as. It means because they preferred not to have a face-to-face communication. I would say it like that. And maybe don't need a comma here. So I think we want to show cause effect here, but I don't know exactly what your meaning is here, but I can tell you when I look back at the TOEFL IBT rubrics, right? And that last sentence I read, where is it here? Yeah, the scoring guides. It's right here where it says 3. It says inconsistent facility, sentence formation, and word choice that may result in lack of clarity and occasionally obscure meaning. I truly don't exactly get your meaning here, and that's one of the reasons I gave you a little bit below the 375. Again, if we look at it again, I think this is what you're trying to say, but I can't be sure. After all, making a phone call or sending an email to each other from either party to apologize would have solved this unhappy case in as much as they preferred not to have a face-to-face communication, right? So because they didn't want to talk face-to-face, they could have made the phone call or sent the message. And that would have solved this, but they didn't. Then you say, in addition, I once had an argument with my classmate based on an educational term. This infuriated me and it led me to a Cold War between, I'm going to put him and me. Usually it's better to put the other person first. It led to a Cold War between him and me for a long time until I realized and learned that my argument was half correct. In this case, even though I was angry, now this is causing trouble right here too. Even though I was angry, you can't say even though and then yet. That is a mixed construction. Go to Google. What is a mixed construction? In this case, you're using even though, which creates a dependent clause. Then you're using yet, which is a coordinating conjunction. You can't have a compound and then a complex sentence all at the same time here. You can't do that. So even though I was angry, I decided to relive tension between, let's put him first, my classmate, and me, and I decided to relieve tension between my classmate and me by sending him a text message to make an apology. And you probably don't have to say to him because you already said what you're doing there. In turn, I received his message, which told me that he never delved into this issue after that, which mediated, you're losing control of your tenses here, which mediated the tension between him and me. You know what? Your examples are good. I got to hand it off. I like how your specific hints. I did not lose my face when it came to this bad blood. Thanks to ecommunication, this, I'm going to say this. Fortunately, we can say it a little bit better here maybe. Fortunately, ecommunication helped, past tense, helped me get out of the awkward situation without having face-to-face communication. Lastly, I fully consent to the idea that email communication is much better than face-to-face communication in that it is convenient and saves face. Kind of like that. Now, what you did here, I really like. I like how you mentioned the word saves face here, and then you put, I did not lose my face at the end. So that creates unity within the paragraph. So let's take a look at the essay one more time. Let's get the whole picture. Let's read the whole thing, and I'll make a few more corrections, and then I'm going to go into my course. I'm going to recommend what lessons I think you can benefit the most from based on the errors that you're making. Okay, here we go. It says, at work, at home, or in interpersonal relationships with others, people need to communicate in order to express their ideas. Don't even have to say that. Toward this end, the means of e-communication is trendy nowadays, which means that people are obsessed with this kind of messaging. However, some people might say that face-to-face communication is still the better way of interacting for interacting purposes. As for me, I am still prone to the e-communication such as email, text messages, or telephone calls in that it is convenient and saves face compared to face-to-face communication, which is more emotion-oriented. First, using e-communication methods helps people conveniently communicate with each other wherever they go and whenever they want. This type of communication encourages people to converse with each other without considering time differences. For instance, I can easily make phone calls to my friends who stay in the UK, although we are in different time zones. 30 years ago, those who stayed in the U.S. found it impossible to communicate with those who resided in other countries. For instance, one of my dad's friends who was in Boston seemed like he seldom communicated with his friends who stayed in China. Therefore, the lack of e-communication platforms impeded people trying to communicate, so those who went abroad had great difficulty staying connected with their friends. As a result, from these two cases, e-communication will benefit people's lives due to its convenience. Good. And you restate the purpose here, and it ties back to the topic in the beginning. Second, the e-communication method saves face, which means that people will avoid awkwardness when they do not want to have face-to-face contact with others. For instance, when Cardi B and Nicki Minaj had a huge fight at Met Gala, they were supposed to get back together after creating a frenzy on the internet. After all, making a phone call or sending an email to each other from either party to apologize would have solved this unhappy case, inasmuch as they preferred not to have face-to-face communication. Now this one, I don't know. I don't know if they made the call or not. I don't know exactly your meaning here, so you have to determine whether what I did here matches what you're trying to say. In addition, I once had an argument with my classmate based on an educational term. This infuriated me. Excuse me. And it led to, I'm going to say, a Cold War. You're introducing this for the first time, right? It's more new. It led to a Cold War between him and me for a very long time until I realized and learned that my argument was half correct. In this case, even though I was angry, I decided to relieve tension between my classmate and me by sending him a text message to make an apology. In turn, I received his message, which told me that he never delved into this issue after that, which mediated the tension between him and me. Hence, I did not lose my face when it came to this bad blood. Fortunately, e-communication helped me get out of the awkward situation without having face-to-face communication. How about this? You use the word awkward. We'll use that word you wanted to use a minute ago. It helped me get out of the uneasy situation without having face-to-face communication. Lastly, I fully consent to the idea that e-communication is much better than face-to-face communication in that it is convenient and saves face. So I'm looking at my website right now. This is a tough situation for you here. To get you to 29 or 30, this is not going to be easy. You have quite a few problems with your sentence structure, word choice, and a lot of different things. So this is not an easy problem to solve. Um, let's take a look at the let's look over in the grammar part of my course first. So I just read the essay. Everything is fresh in my mind. So I'm going to look at different lessons here to see what problems you might be having. Okay, how about I'd like you to take a look at subject verb inversions. This is important for your syntactic variety, so take a look at that. Lesson 17, verb tenses. Just study the verb tenses with the knowledge that you want to be consistent with your verb tenses, especially when you refer to actions in the past. That would be why you would study lesson 17. Lesson 21, prepositions. Sometimes you put prepositions in there when they're not needed. Sometimes you leave them out when they are needed. So take a look at lesson 21. I think lesson 26, syntactic variety, and also 26.2, it's sentence variety practice exercises. And then the biggest problem, I think, is being more concise. You have a lot of really heavy grammatically laden sentence. You put a lot of things it and there and got all these things in there that in many cases are not needed. So you need a more concise way of your academic writing, and that's what this lesson will teach you. It will show you how to be more concise, how to create the best sentences possible for academic writing. And then you can do lesson 28.1, making sentences more concise practice exercises, which I think is good too. Now, I think something that I wouldn't recommend this initially. I know that you joined my course. It's not cheap. I know it's $130. You're doing a lot of writing practice. It might not be a bad idea. Maybe you might do one private lesson a week, maybe where we can take one of your essays and go over it in more detail. I know that costs a little bit more money, but something to think about, because I see it. I don't see this as an easy problem when I'm looking at your writing. I see a lot of instruction. I'm going to have to work with you for maybe a month or even more than a month to get the writing at the level it needs to be to get consistently over, say, 25 or 26 points. And that would be what you would look at in the grammar part. But I think the writing is dead on. I think you have a very strong writing style. You can review lesson 1 if you want, TOEFL Independent Writing Strategies, but overall you have a good knack for organizing and developing your ideas and then presenting very specific details to support those points. So I think you're going in the right direction here. So I actually don't have a lot of recommendations when it comes to the writing part of my course. So you just have to solve those grammatical problems, and that's going to make a very big difference on your score. All right? And thank you. So you have one more error correction video. I suggest that you use it for an integrated writing task. I think is going to be better in that case. You can pick an integrated writing task from my website, or you can pick one from somewhere else, but I prefer that you use an integrated writing task from my website because I'm familiar with the content, the reading, and the listening passages because I wrote the scripts. That's why I would suggest that. All right, so keep up the good work. Now, you can also keep sending me writing practice each week. It doesn't all have to be error corrected, right? So keep practicing the writing. Right? If you want to do something simpler, it's easy for me to comment on it. You might just do, remember, we're focusing on your grammar errors. So maybe do an introductory paragraph along with your thesis. So for some of your writing practice, maybe just bring up one reason and then have one paragraph for that one reason and then a conclusion. And obviously you wouldn't do that on the TOEFL exam, but basically you're saying, Michael, I want you to take a look at this one body paragraph and look at the grammar errors in there. And if it's only a short paragraph, I can give you some comments even on that by either by video or by audio. I can give you some comments on that, and it doesn't overwhelm me. We know that you can write the essay. There is no doubt in my mind on that. But can you write it with a high level of polish that's high enough to get you over 25 or 26 on the writing section? Now, that's what we don't know. At least we know right now that you didn't. I gave you around 22 points on this writing practice test that you just submitted. All right? Okay, see you later.